Joining me now is Oona Hathaway, professor of international law at Yale Law School and the founder and director of the Center for Global Legal Challenges. Professor Hathaway, thank you for being with us. Is there any way to actually charge Vladimir Putin or anyone else in the Russian chain of command with war crimes?
Yes, probably the main way forward here at the moment is through the International Criminal Court. So as you mentioned, the International Criminal Court does have jurisdiction here, and that is because Ukraine gave it jurisdiction starting in 2013 over all the events that are happening in Ukraine, and it still has jurisdiction today. And in fact, the prosecutor of the International Criminal Court has already begun investigations supported by referrals from 41 countries who have basically said, we really support this effort, many of them offering additional money and support and assistance for that investigation. So those investigations have already begun. And there's a number of steps here. There has to be evidence collection, that is actually documenting the crimes that are taking place and ensuring that we collect that evidence in a way that it can eventually be presented in a court. And then there's the next step of figuring out who is responsible for these terrible crimes and connecting the acts and the terrible events to the people who actually are responsible for them.
Let's talk about the facets that you talk about of international law. Is it possible to create a tribunal about this that Russia isn't part of? Russia doesn't have buy-in to the International Criminal Court, and this isn't the week or the month or the year that it's going to decide to change its mind. So how is there an enforcement mechanism?
Yeah, so that's a great question. And the reason that the International Criminal Court does have jurisdiction over Russians is because they're committing their crimes in Ukraine. So it's the same principle that if I go to London and I commit a crime there, I can be brought in front of a London court for committing a crime in London. I'm an American, but I'm still responsible for the crimes that I commit in another state's territory. Similarly here, Russia is committing a whole host of crimes, war crimes, crimes against humanity, perhaps even genocide, and the crime of aggression on the territory of Ukraine. So Ukraine does have the right to prosecute those crimes, to do it itself, or to allow an international court to prosecute those crimes. And so Ukraine has given jurisdiction over these crimes to the International Criminal Court, and that's what allows it to have jurisdiction over the Russians who are committing their crimes on the soil of Ukraine. And so even though Russia is not party to the ICC, may not recognize it, it doesn't really matter. It's still the case that the International Criminal Court can prosecute them for the crimes that they're committing in Ukraine, because Ukraine is the one who has the power to give the court jurisdiction.
It is important to note that Joe Biden and the State Department and others are talking about the fact that there are likely war crimes committed, because for decades, the United States itself has either resisted or undermined institutions like the ICC or the UN High Commissioner on Human Rights because of allegations that have been made against the United States and allies like Israel. Apparently, the Biden administration is reviewing the U.S.'s position with respect to the International Criminal Court. This feels like a moment for America to re-engage those institutions.
Absolutely. And you're absolutely right that the United States has had an uneasy relationship with the International Criminal Court in particular. You may remember that under the Trump administration, that we actually sanctioned members of the International Criminal Court, judges and attorneys who were participating in an investigation of the United States for actions committed in Afghanistan. So we've had a very uneasy relationship with the International Criminal Court. And what this moment does present is an opportunity for the United States to think about how do we provide accountability in these situations? How can we work with the International Criminal Court? Sometimes it is the only body that is legitimately in a position to actually prosecute these crimes. And we believe in international law. We believe in the Geneva Conventions, and we need a way to bring accountability for these violations. And the International Criminal Court is really the institution that is best situated to do that, in addition to the Ukrainian courts themselves, which, as you mentioned in the outset of the segment, has already begun some investigations, in fact, thousands of cases of war crimes violations. But aside from the Ukrainian courts, the International Criminal Court really is the best institution for taking these forward. And so the U.S. is going to have to figure out how to work with it effectively and how to support its efforts.